You're listening to Innovation for Alpha, where we explore everything at the intersection of healthcare innovation and finance. Through our discussions and interviews, we keep you informed and educated about healthcare innovations, next-level venture investing, and everything involving the combination of the two.
Hi, everybody. This is Tobin Arthur with the Innovation for Alpha podcast, and I am joined today by one of my favorite entrepreneurs. Anil Israni is running a company called TearSolutions. You're going to find the company fascinating, but Anil is a fantastic entrepreneur who is shepherding this company, and I think you're going to like him equally as much as you do the company. So Anil, welcome to the program.
Thanks so much, Tobin. It's an honor to be here. Thank you for having us.
Well, I always enjoy chatting with you. You are clear-headed. You have a great company on your hands. Why don't we start a little bit with your personal background and then talk a little about the background of the company, because it's pretty fascinating.
Sure. Yeah, actually, and they're linked too. So not to delve into ancient history, but was it 25 plus years ago, my first job out of college was actually in our founder's lab. So I was in the lab when he discovered this protein called Lacripep. And obviously I stayed in academic medical research for another decade or so, and then went back, got my MBA from the Carlson School here at the University of Minnesota, and then moved into medical device. Spent about 12 years in med device, 10 of which were at Medtronic, essentially on a general management track. So I was, increasing roles roles of increasing responsibility in marketing, strategy, business development, and investor relations. And then about 2 years ago, Gordon, called me and said, "There's an opportunity to come lead this company." And I had actually invested in the company when it was founded in 2013. So that kind of dovetails into the company. Founded in 2013, I came into the leadership position here as CEO 2 years ago, and really what we've been able to do is generate first in human data for our lead product called Lacripep, and that has shown to be quite effective at addressing dry eye. Now, we've only studied primary Sjogren's, which is a very severe form of dry eye, and we can talk a little bit more about that in detail. But from a first in human perspective, we've got some really exciting data that is turning heads of key opinion leaders in the space, as well as strategics in the space.
So we'll get into the company here in a minute. And obviously, as you indicate, it's addressing dry eye, a big space and a growing space. But I want to go back a little bit further, because you have shared with me that the discovery of what caused dry eye and this missing protein was actually a little bit accidental. Why don't you tell a little bit about that story?
Yeah. And actually it was not accidental. It was quite intentional. Gordon, really set out to find what is the root cause of dry eye. Typically, maybe what you're referencing to in terms of accidental, most people, kind of approach this, at least most of the products approach this from trying to decouple some step in the inflammatory pathway. Mm-hmm. Gordon was actually looking to find out, what's really missing in dry eye tears as compared to healthy normal tears. And he did that with what he describes as an unbiased biochemical screen. Now, that's basically trying to find the needle in the haystack. And ultimately he did find it, which is Lacripep. Now, he named that protein, but it was a novel protein when he discovered it. And we're not the only ones who are saying that this is a protein that's deficient in dry eye. If you actually go to the DEWS-2, that's DEWS, DEWS-2 report, that's the dry eye workshop. It's basically all the best minds that kind of come together and create the seminal report in this space. They are also saying that all forms of dry eye are deficient in Lacripep. It is the only protein that we're aware of that has bioactivity that's deficient in all forms of dry eye.
Interesting. So, and correct me if I'm wrong, but he discovered this some number of years ago, and then he went down a different path for a while before TearSolutions came along. Kind of talk about how TearSolutions got jump-started.
Yeah, actually, so what he did was, when he discovered the protein, he sort of set out to create a group of collaborators, an international group of collaborators who have actually since published quite extensively on Lacritin's role in restoring ocular health. Some people have also investigated other aspects of the protein, and we can talk about those other opportunities. But essentially, he started building the scientific case for, as you can imagine, he's an academic researcher. He's interested in cellular and molecular mechanisms. And so he really started setting up the science to support why this protein was doing what it was doing and what its role really was. So he was really focused on the science. And then, around probably, 2011 or 12, I think, they were looking at a variety of potential partners to potentially license this technology, because it is owned by the University of Virginia. That's where Gordon is a professor. But really what he ended up wanting to do was, start this on his own. And so that's when he founded the company in 2013.
And so you came on board a couple of years ago, as you mentioned. What's been your focus since? Where did you pick up the ball, and where's the ball gone since?
Yeah, so when I came into the company, we had completed the first in human, and we were literally pouring through the data to understand, because this was a first in human experience, really understand what did we learn from this experience, and ultimately what we learned, and this is really important and actually critical in the dry eye space. What we learned was that we are hitting both sign and symptom. Now that's FDA speak, if you will, for an objective measure of eye health, which is the sign, and a subjective patient-reported measure of patient symptomatology, essentially. Now, most dry eye companies struggle to hit both of those in one trial. We were fortunate in that we did. And the other thing that is really impressive about this therapeutic is most of the drugs that you see out there will take months to actually provide relief for patients. So the patients are putting the drops in for months before they actually start to get relief. And that has to do with some of the mechanisms of these other drugs. Ours is actually showing very fast relief for these patients. So as early as 2 weeks. We didn't study 1 week in our first in human trial. We will study it in our next. But it really, what excited me was we're learning that this is, impacting in a positive way, both sign and symptom, and it's doing it quickly. And what's even more impressive is it's doing it safely, because all we're putting back into the eye is what's missing, right? This is a protein that's deficient. We've designed a peptide that we're replacing that protein with. I think it's, if it's easier for people to kind of get a line out of this, which is, we believe that Lacritin is to dry eye disease as insulin is to type 1 diabetes. If your body's not sufficiently producing it, then you are going to have the disease, and you're going to have, to take some sort of supplementation to manage that disease over your life. And so that's really kind of when I came into the company, got through the data, put the story around that data, and then really got out to try and raise funds to get us back into the clinic. And that's really where we are today, which is we're raising funds right now to get us back into the clinic. Our goal now is, we did a proof of concept in primary Sjogren's. That's a patient population that's normally excluded from dry eye trials because they're very hard to treat. We're now going to do a proof of concept study and a dose ranging study in general dry eye. Now that is the big commercial population. That's the thing that gets everybody excited, right? That's what Xiidra was going after. And that's why they were sold to Novartis for $5.3 billion, because that general dry eye population is really the market, if you will. The primary Sjogren's is a smaller part of that market.
Yep. So just to recap there, big market, it's growing because of the older population. Your solution is looking like it's more effective than the alternatives on the market. It's also, I'll use the word safer, but I guess the better word is more comfortable, because the current products are discomforting. There's irritation and things typically involved. Maybe just touch on that a little bit.
Yeah. So that's, that's the challenge with some of these current products. Like I said, it can often take months before patients get the relief that they're looking for. But in the meantime, they're putting these drops in their eyes. And a lot of these products come with high rates, meaning 20+% of people who are reporting that when they put the drop in their eyes, it burns or stings their eyes. Now, in our first in human, we only had 3% report any kind of discomfort. So I think from a comfort perspective, we're definitely doing really well. The other thing that comes with some of these products is there are terms like dysgeusia. You put the drop in your eye, you get a foul metallic taste in your mouth. That is not something that we have any issues with. Other products can cause blurred vision, and we don't have any problem with that. Sneezing fits is another problem that comes with a particular product. We don't have any problem with that. But then the other thing too is, again, remember I talked to you about how quickly we're providing relief to people. So within 2 weeks, we're providing relief to these patients.
Right.
The only place you get that kind of relief is with a steroid. Now, steroids have their own problems. They can provide relief quickly, but you can't use that steroid chronically because it essentially gives you an increase in intraocular pressure. So you're essentially trading dry eye for glaucoma. Obviously, not a good trade. So we feel like we're coming into a field, that is ripe for disruption, and we think that we have, the product that will be that disruption.
I love it. And you came in at an interesting time 2 years ago, essentially, as you've been in there during this whole COVID craziness, but you've been able to shepherd the company, forward. It's continued to move along. Interest is growing. Talk a little bit about where you are with the new round. Interest, I know, is growing significantly in that round. How much are you raising, and what's it going to be used for?
Yeah, perfect. So we're raising 20 million. We have 5.6 that's already in a bridge for that 20. So the remaining 14.4, let's just make simple numbers. The remaining 15, our current investors will do about 7 of that. And so we're looking for 8 of new funds. One of the things that we're trying to navigate, we've got 2 strategics who are interested in us, who have gone through diligence with us. We're talking to them about what next steps might look like with them. But, in that scenario, you're often looking at potentially trading away a strategic right. And we have not had to trade away any strategic rights in the company so far. We'd prefer not to have to trade one away at this point in the company's trajectory. So that 8 million, is really where we're looking for new investors. We've got several groups who have expressed interest. We expect term sheets to be coming in over the next several weeks. And so now switching to what's that going to be used for? Of the 20 million, 10 of it is for the clinical trial. 5 of it is for getting us phase 3 ready, right? So when we exit this next trial, we want to have a phase 3 ready asset. In dry eye, you have to do 2 phase 3s. If strategic interest remains high, then they will likely want to run those phase 3s, and they can do that in parallel. If, however, we don't get the deal that we're looking for, then we would run them, and we would prefer to run them in parallel, but we can certainly run them serially. So again, 10 million for the clinical study, 5 million for phase 3 readiness from a CMC perspective, that's manufacturing perspective, and then an additional 5 for ongoing G&A expenses as we continue to develop our pipeline here at the company.
So for people not familiar with how long these might take, give a sense of timelines. What do you anticipate? Obviously, there's the caveat that you don't control everything, but what generally would you expect with the phase 2 and then the multiple phase 3s?
Yeah. So the nice thing about dry eye, especially the general dry eye studies, is those can be relatively quick. So the next study is 260 patients. That's 4 arms. There's a vehicle and 3 doses. Remember, this is going to be a dose ranging study in the general dry eye population. That will take approximately 10 months. And we expect to kind of kick that off in the 3rd to 4th quarter of this year. So you'd imagine that you'd get top line data back by the end of 2023, and then you'd be entering into phase 3 trials in 2024, early 2024. So if you run those phase 3s in parallel, you're looking for an NDA submission in the 2025, probably mid 2025 timeframe.
Okay.
And that's when the NDA submission, and then you get an FDA decision on whether you're approved or not.
So what are the things, I don't ask this question in this way very often, but what are the things that keep you up at night, and from the standpoint of what are the risks at this point? Because it sounds like from a clinical and an effectiveness basis, there's a lot of promise here. A lot's already been, a lot of the risk has been extracted. Capital is always a risk. You need access to capital in order to execute on these. But what are the things that, that cause you concern, that you want to manage or extract, that risk out of the equation?
Yeah, I mean, for me, I think capital is one, right? I mean, we're in an environment right now where the biotech index is not doing what people would hope it would be doing, right? I mean, the market is already had some significant correction, and biotech has been hit even harder. So I think finding that capital is a concern, but at the same time, like I said, we've got an $8 million chunk that we're basically trying to get after, and we've got several parties who have expressed sincere interest in that. So I feel like that's pretty good. That doesn't keep me up as much as for me, it's everything in biotech kind of pivots around the clinical data, right? And so the way that we've tried to manage this risk is, because remember, we're moving from a primary Sjogren's patient population, which is a severe form of dry eye that is very hard to treat, and we did well in that population. Now we're moving to a general dry eye population, and that population is different from the primary Sjogren's patient population. But what we've tried to do is that there are certain criteria that we used to include patients in our study for primary Sjogren's, right? These are all technical terms. We can get into these, but essentially eye dryness greater than 60. So that means that you've got a moderate to severe patient population. And that was actually a key learning that came out of our first trial. But also Schirmer's strip tests less than 5 millimeters. Again, we're getting into the weeds here, but essentially what you're trying to do is match these patient populations as well as you can. And so we've done that. The only difference between these two patient populations now is this one had primary Sjogren's as a diagnosis, this one will not. But the other criteria are there. So I think we're managing that risk effectively, and we've socialized that approach with the strategics as well as with our medical advisory board, and everybody's in violent agreement that this is the best next step for us. In terms of other risks that for me, there's always the competitive risk that somebody's going to come out with something, but when you talk about the bar that's been set with the current products, like I said, there's a lot of problems with those current products. Even if somebody comes in with something a little bit better than those, we really feel like we've got something that's game changing. So whether or not we are, first to market with this game changing technology, or whether somebody comes out with something that's an incremental achievement, I still think we're going to find a very solid, fan base, if you will, amongst what is a very consumer-centric market, which is the dry eye drop.
Yeah, no doubt. And by the way, you mentioned that the technology came out of the University of Virginia.
Correct.
Maybe just mention briefly the patent portfolio that this enjoys so far.
Yeah, sure. So actually, all the foundational intellectual property, everything from the discovery of Lacripep is owned by the University of Virginia, of which we have an exclusive license to. Then, as we started to develop a way. So if someone's watching the video, essentially, if your hand is Lacripep, which is a 119 amino acid protein, Lacripep, which is the peptide that we're using, is a 19 amino acid peptide derived from Lacripep, and it preserves all the bioactivity of Lacripep. It's essentially its active binding domain. That then developed obviously new IP for us, of which we got composition of matter for in 2019. So we've got a nice long runway for Lacripep. And right behind it, we've got other peptides that we've derived from Lacripep that we're showing have efficacy in human corneal epithelial cells, which is how we test them, preclinically. But they've also got other properties that we're testing in other indications. I'll just tease here a little bit. We're looking at non-obese diabetic mice. So that's basically a type 1 diabetic mouse model. and we're showing that we can get them under glucose control. And the way that we're doing that is by injecting this 3 times a week, one of these peptides that we've discovered from, derived from Lacripep. And we're showing not only when we get them under glucose control, we can improve their beta cell viability, and beta cells are the ones that secrete insulin, and we can also improve those beta cells' secretion of insulin. So some really exciting stuff that we're learning about this molecule, and we'll continue to explore because we have other indications that we'd like to chase.
It's a great story, Neil. Love the company. It's got a cool background. You're the right guy to shepherd this. Always enjoy chatting with you, and we are huge fans. We want to see this just blow up with success, and I appreciate you spending some time sharing. Keep us up to date so we can share with the community, and we will include in the show notes information on how to reach out to you for those interested in participating in this particular round, this $20 million round. And are there any other asks? Are there any other needs that you have beyond getting this raise done that you can think of at the moment?
That's really Tobin, that's really the primary one for right now. So we are laser focused on getting us back into the clinic, and the only way that we get back into the clinic is by raising the funds that we need to execute the clinical trial. Once we are back in the clinic, I'm obviously really excited to see that data. And I know that we are not alone in that. Like I said, we've got key opinion leaders who have been close to the story, who want to see what's next for us. And we also have strategics who are looking for that. So the big ask for me is, if you're interested in potentially investing in TearSolutions, please be sure to reach out to us. We will be obviously, raising these funds, and we are actively, but I do expect that we should have that wrapped up in the next, few months. And to be honest with you, and there's no way that, I can guarantee this, but it feels like this may be the last time we actually have to raise funds, because either after this next clinical data, if it comes out the way we expect it, we'll either exit or we could be looking to, to public markets for other activity.
Yep, love it.
But I really would want to just take a minute just to thank folks for the time that they have spent, listening to us, and obviously weren't able to get into all of the detail here today. So if you'd like to learn more, please feel free to reach out. We'd love to tell you a little bit more about our company and our trajectory.
Great. Well, Neil, keep up the great work. And again, thanks for your time.
Oh, my pleasure. Thanks so much again, Tobin, for having us here today.
See you again soon for the next episode of Innovation for Alpha. Make sure to go to Innovation for Alpha for access to prior episode links, show notes, and other valuable resources. This show is for entertainment purposes only. Before making any investment decisions, please consult with a professional. This show is copyrighted by Angel MD Media, and written permission must be granted before syndication or rebroadcasting.